If you've been to the clinic before, or if you've seen one of my videos, you know I'm a big proponent of a daily walking program. And I also believe that we need to be tracking our steps, because if we don't measure something, we don't manage it. So I'll be honest with you, I thought I was getting a lot more steps in before I decided to get a tracker and started tracking my steps as well too. But how many steps do we really need? And is there one particular joint that we have to make sure that we stretch out and mobilize in order to keep us walking for the long term? There is. Let's find out. Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Ed Dubu, a physical therapist from Integrated Physical Therapy in Bellingham, Washington. We've all heard about the 10,000 steps a day, and if you're hitting 10,000 steps a day or more, that's fantastic, that's great, keep it going. I know I don't. So if you look at the literature, they've boiled it down to about, at the very minimum, 4,000 steps a day, but ideally we're all in that 7,500 steps a day or more range. But I strongly do recommend tracking your steps. Now people will say, well gosh, my phone tracks my steps for me. But unless your phone is with you all the time, you're missing out on those valuable steps that you might be doing in the house, activity, cooking, all that kind of stuff, because all that counts as steps, and get credit for all of those steps. Let's talk about the mechanics of walking and what happens at the hip and lumbar spine when we walk. First, we'll go over a little bit of anatomy. This is hip flexion. When I bring my hip up, when my hip goes behind me, that's hip extension. In order to get a good stride when we're walking, we have to have good hip extension. Most of us have plenty of hip flexion because you think about what happens when we sit, we're in hip flexion. So most of us don't lack hip flexion. But what happens, especially as we start to get older and we do more sitting, is we lack hip extension. And a lack of hip extension has been really strongly correlated with lower back pain on that side as well too. So a bonus is if you have one-sided lower back pain, check to see what kind of hip extension you have on that side, and chances are you may be a little tighter and lack a little bit of hip extension. You notice when we're walking, this hip has to go into extension. As this hip starts to get tighter because of age, immobility, too much sitting, we lose hip extension, and then we start walking with less hip extension in a slightly flexed position, which is not really where we want to be for the long run. We want to be able to take those big strides. So we'll talk about 3 different ways in which you can improve hip extension, and we'll start with an easy version, an intermediate version, and then we'll go to the hardest version. The first way we're going to work on hip extension is literally just a standing lunge. And I want you to use the wall for a little bit of balance because I don't want you to work on trying to balance yourself as we're trying to stretch. The main goal is we're trying to feel a pull in the front of our hip. You'll take a big enough stride. Now the key is here is we really have to tuck our tail, because if we don't, a lot of that motion is going to come from our lumbar spine, which we don't want to put that pressure on the lumbar spine, and then come forward until you feel a pull. So for me, I can come right about here and I start to get a stretch in the front of my left thigh. If you start to get a calf stretch, we don't really, which is not a bad thing, but we don't really want the calf stretch right now. So go ahead and just lift up your heel. That way the focus is on the front in this situation of my left hip. And then I'm going to maintain this position for about a 30-second count. And then I'll repeat the same thing on the other side. And I'm going to come forward until I feel a pull. So for me, I get a greater pull on the right front of my right hip. And guess what? It coordinates with some of the chronic lower back pain that I get on the right side. So I would do 2 30-second stretches, trying to really improve that hip extension as time goes on. Now I'm going to show you how to get a little bit of a deeper stretch. So you're going to need a pillow and maybe a chair. And what you'll do is you're going to put your knee on that pillow as far back as you can. And then you're going to come up this way. So now what we're doing is, not only am I working on hip extension, but because my knee is bent, I'm getting a nice quad stretch through here as well too. The same rules apply. You really want to make sure that you tuck your tail, because if I don't tuck my tail, I can come all the way down through here, but once again, I'm stressing that lumbar spine in a way which I don't really want to. So I'm going to come back to neutral here. I'm going to tuck my tail, and then I'm going to come forward. I'm going to hold this stretch for about a 30-second count, keeping my glutes tight, my tail tucked. 30 seconds, a couple times on each side. Now, if you want to go even next level, you just get rid of this. You bring your knee as far back as you can to the wall. And you come up into this position here. And now it's a legit stretch. Because it changed the position of my foot, I'm even getting a greater quad stretch through here. And the idea is that you want to try to sit up as tall as you can and get yourself towards that wall. In the comment section down below, I want you to tell me how many steps a day you try to get, and if you track your steps or not. And number 2, which one of the 3 stretches for hip extension is the best for you? All right, everyone, thank you for watching. If you found the video helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel so you never miss another one of our videos. Until the next video, keep exercising, track your steps, and we'll see you soon.